Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We've had a few weeks off as our studio has been remodeled and renovated, and we had a few tape shows, but we're back doing live shows for the foreseeable future. Next to me is Mr. Casper Leach, the joint host of our show here, and standing by in the wings is Justin James Bridges and Jimmy Harden, who will be playing us some music here in just a moment. So I guess you got some of your songs, Justin?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, we have our hemp news segment that's coming up momentarily, and then the music will play, and then we'll be taking your phone calls. So if you got any questions about ending adult marijuana prohibition, restoring industrial hemp, or helping medical marijuana patients, you can call us at 503-288-4442. But first, as we always do, we'll bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first story tonight is out of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. California Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, along with 5 other Republicans and 6 Democrats, has reintroduced legislation to prevent the federal government from criminally prosecuting individuals or businesses who engage in state-sanctioned activities specific to cannabis. H.R. 1094 states, quote, "Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the provisions of this subchapter related to marijuana shall not apply to any person acting in compliance with state laws relating to the production, possession, distribution, dispensation, administration, or delivery of marijuana," end quote. Representative Rohrabacher sponsored a budgetary amendment last year to limit federal interference in states with marijuana regulation schemes. However, a spokesman at the Department of Justice recently claimed that the law does not prevent the government sanctioning individuals or businesses in states where marijuana is legal. Rohrabacher says, quote, "The American people have made it clear that federal enforcers should stay out of their personal lives," Rohrabacher said in a statement upon the bill's reintroduction. He went on, quote, "It's time for restraint of federal government's over-aggressive weed warriors," end quote. Of course, we couldn't agree more. Out of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, sales involving legal marijuana products and marijuana-related services are estimated to total $10 billion by the end of this year, according to a report issued by the publication Marijuana Business Daily. The authors based their findings on survey data provided by 1,000 business owners and their financial backers. According to the report, sales of cannabis or cannabis-infused products are expected to total some $3.1 billion by the year's end, and another $6.9 billion in revenue is expected to come from ancillary businesses and product sales. The report's authors estimate that revenue specific to legal cannabis industry should be as much as $29 billion annually by 2019. The report identifies between 46,000 and 60,000 people legally employed in enterprises involving the production or retail sale of marijuana. This total is significantly higher if ancillary products and services companies are included. Next story is out of Rochester, New York. More than 80% of the United States adults favor legalizing cannabis for therapeutic purposes, according to the results of a nationwide Harris poll. 81% of respondents, including supermajorities of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, expressed support for legalizing marijuana for medical treatment. The result's an increase of 7 points since Harris pollsters last posed the question in 2011. Down in the Caribbean, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, Puerto Rican Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla signed an executive order on Sunday to allow for the therapeutic use of cannabis and cannabinoids. The their health department now has 90 days to create regulations regarding how the new law will be implemented. Among the regulations to be debated will be whether or not to permit patients to access herbal cannabis. On Wednesday, the United States Justice Department officials told the Associated Press that patients would most likely only have access to non-smoke preparations of cannabis, such as oils or pills. The governor of Puerto Rico stated in a press release, quote, "We're taking a significant step in the area of health that is fundamental to our development and quality of life. I'm sure that many patients will receive appropriate treatment that will offer them new hope," end quote. Back to Washington, D.C., members of the U.S. Senate Appropriations Committee voted last week in favor of expanding medical cannabis access to United States veterans. The vote marks the first time that a majority of any U.S. body in the United States Senate has ever decided in favor of increased cannabis access. Committee members decided 18-12 in favor of the Veterans Equal Access Amendment, sponsored by Republican Senator Steve Dines of Montana and Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of here in Oregon. Sponsors added the provision in a committee to a must-pass Military Construction and Veterans Affairs spending bill, the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act. The full Senate's expected to approve the language imminently. Weeks ago, House members narrowly killed a similar amendment in the House version of the Military Appropriations Act by a floor vote of 210 to 213. Once the Senate passes its version on the floor, House and Senate leaders will reconcile the two versions. The Daines-Merkley amendment permits physicians affiliated with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, or the VA, to recommend cannabis therapy to veterans in states that allow for its therapeutic use. Under federal law, VA doctors are not permitted to fill out written documents or forms authorizing their patients to participate in state-sanctioned medical cannabis programs. This standalone legislation, H.R. 667, to permit VA physicians to recommend cannabis therapy, is pending in the United States House of Representatives Committee on Veterans Affairs Health Subcommittee. A similar provision is also included in the Senate Bill 683, or H.R. 1538, the Compassionate Access Research Expansion and Respect States Act, or the CARES Act. In Michigan, a history of cannabis use is inversely correlated with diabetes mellitus, according to an epidemiological review published online ahead of the print in the journal Epidemiology. The investigators at Michigan State University Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics performed a meta-analytic study assessing cannabis use and diabetes in the general population. The authors determined, quote, "Recently active cannabis smoking and diabetes mellitus are inversely associated." The authors estimated that subjects with a history of cannabis use were about 30% less likely to have diabetes compared to non-using subjects. The authors concluded, quote, "Current evidence is too weak for causal inference, but there's now more stable evidence base for new lines of clinical translation research on possible protective cannabis smoking diabetes mellitus associations suggested in prior research," end quote. An observational trial published in the American Journal of Medicine in 2013 reported that subjects who consume cannabis possess favorable indices related to diabetic control compared to those without a history of recent marijuana use. Separate observational trial data published in 2012 in the British Medical Journal reported that marijuana users had a lower prevalence of type 2 diabetes and possessed a lower risk of contracting the disease than those with no history of cannabis consumption, even after researchers adjusted for social variables such as the subject's ethnicity and levels of physical activity. The text of this study, Cannabis Smoking and Diabetes Mellitus, the results from a meta-analysis with 8 independent replication samples, appears in Epidemiology. Out in the islands of Hawaii, the Hawaiian House and Senate lawmakers approved legislation to establish a system of medical dispensaries for the state's estimated 13,000 medical marijuana patients. The measure, House Bill 321, now awaits action from Democratic Governor David Inge. The measure permits the state to issue 8 dispensary licenses statewide, provided that 3 dispensary licenses shall be issued for the city and county of Honolulu, and 2 dispensary licenses shall be issued for the county of Hawaii and the county of Maui, and 1 dispensary license shall be issued for the county of Kauai. Qualified patients will be permitted to obtain up to 4 ounces of marijuana or marijuana-infused products over a 15-day period. Under the measure, Hawaii's licensed dispensaries will be operational by July 15, 2016. The measure also adds post-traumatic stress as a qualifying medical condition. The lawmakers initially enacted legislation allowing for physician-authorized use of cannabis therapy in the year 2000, but existing law provides no state licensed source for cannabis aside from home cultivation. This will be a big help for the patients out there in Hawaii, and we applaud the Hawaii legislature in doing that. That's the end of our Hemp News segment this evening, and we're going to jump over, and we've got some great tunes from Mr. Justin James Bridges and his drummer, Jimmy Harden.
That's right. How y'all doing tonight? All right. This song is called Chances. Thank you very much.
What's the name of that tune?
Huh? The name is Chances.
And you wrote
Chances. Yes, sir.
that? Good work.
Thank you very much.
We'll have you back
Appreciate
on
that.
at the end of the show. And welcome, viewers. Welcome,
Thank you very
Steve
much.
Elliott.
Thank you,
Good to
Paul.
see you.
Hi, Casper.
Good to see you too, Casper. Welcome, viewers. If you folks have any questions for us tonight, it is the 29th of May. And if you're watching on Friday, 29th of May, you can call us at 503-288-4442. We'll take your calls regarding hemp and cannabis. My favorite topics. How have you been doing?
Doing great, and still enjoying 2.5 years in now doing hemp news.
Time
Actually,
flies when you're having fun.
it really does, and it's an honor to be a part of the internet's longest continuously running compilation of information about hemp. That's a good thing.
Okay. I dropped my microphone down here apparently. I hate it when that happens. Well, give me just a second.
Well, in the meantime, what are you focusing on in the newsletter and the magazine that you're putting out?
What we have in Washington right now is something that you guys in Oregon have just started to encounter with the advent of recreational legalization. And what we're seeing is that the recreational side of things, of course, they want to maintain their profitability, but the way that unfortunately manifests itself sometimes is that they want to ensure their own profitability by making things more difficult for the medical side, and even in Washington State's case to the extent of actually, for all practical purposes, outlawing the medical side. And I was discussing earlier with Port Orchard herbalist Elisa Little about this very subject, and we were discussing how, like in a normal grocery store, you have your normal mass farm products that have been grown with mass farming methods, and then you have your designer grown organics that you, the understanding is that you're going to have to pay a little more for those because of the care that was taken in growing them. But the fault with the pricing scheme in Washington State is that things are turned on their head, they're backwards, because the marijuana, which was grown with the greatest care and often with organic methods, costs about half and sometimes 1/3 the amount of the recreational marijuana that you find in the 502 stores. So
That's because of the excessive taxation, where
Exactly.
in Washington you have 3 levels of taxation, which doesn't make any sense at all, and no vertical integration. So first you have the growers who cannot be the processors, and the growers are taxed 25%, and they sell it to processors who process it, and then they sell it to retailers, and they're taxed another 25%, and then the retailers sell it, and they add on another 25% tax. Of course, by the time you multiply that, that's well over 100% tax.
And add in,
and then there's
your
a sales tax,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So, what are the costs at the dispensaries you've been visiting, Steve? You're up in Washington State, in the Seattle area, and so at first I know the prices were as much as $35 a gram. Is that still the case for some cannabis?
Prices have come down in recreational stores because of the overabundance of marijuana that they're experiencing right now. Actually, they have like a glut of marijuana. Prices haven't come down as much as they should have, considering the fact that we have a glut. The marijuana that is in the stores is actually usually inferior to the quality of that found
In the
in
medical
the
marijuana
medical
market.
marijuana dispensaries, and it is still roughly 2 to 3 times as much. So,
So the inferior marijuana that's available for adult consumption is 2 or 3 times more than the cost of the medical marijuana,
Right.
which doesn't have that tax burden, but still it's a superior quality product.
Yeah, and it's an odd situation because you would expect it to be the other way around. You know, the designer grown product you would expect to cost more. But like you said, it's the taxation that has things messed up. Now, if you had a more realistic taxation scheme, and if you had regulation of the medical marijuana dispensaries, which we could have had if Christine Gregoire had signed a bill that was
Yeah.
before her that she line item.
She had line item that in 2010, was it? I think so.
So that could all be in place the way you guys have some regulation of medical marijuana here in Oregon, which is going to actually place you in a more advantageous position moving forward as recreational and medical start to compete with each other. because-
Also, the tax here is much less. I mean, it's still a significant tax of about $550 a pound, or it's $35 an ounce for flowers and $10 an ounce for trim and shake.
the Oregon system is set up better to the extent that I wouldn't want to be a Washington 502 marijuana merchant just across the border from Oregon. because, I mean, frankly, if I were a Washington patient living near the border, I would go into Oregon to buy my weed, especially after legalization is implemented in Oregon.
Well, you know, you've had a bill that passed in Washington, 5052, that the governor signed into law. You want to explain to our viewers how that will impact the marijuana market in Washington State?
Yeah, we had a strong lobby from some 502 merchants and other interested parties that apparently had the ear of our legislature, and they passed 5052, which is going to severely change the way medical marijuana is done in Washington. And in fact, it's never going to be the same if 5052 is implemented.
And it starts to be implemented here in late July, unless this referendum petition is successful. There's a referendum petition out there,
Right.
Referendum 76 in Washington State. They could stop that from taking effect, right?
Right, and you vote no on R76. That's an important thing to remember to stop 5052 from being implemented. You're saying no to 5052 by saying no on R76. So we can stop
But we want to sign that petition in Washington State. We urge our Washington State viewers and businesses up there to circulate and get signatures to stop 5052 from going into effect.
And if you're a member of the Washington marijuana community, Don Skacke is the man to contact, and he can set you up with the petitions to get signatures. He can tell you where you can get more of them.
In fact, I can tell you, you can go into any Kinko's store in Washington State and say you want a copy of R76 and pay 12 cents for a double-sided sheet, 11 by 17 sheet, and you can have those petitions at any FedEx store. I would still want to say Kinko's, but they've changed their name. They're FedEx now.
Any full-service FedEx store will have those petitions, and I think they're just 12 cents a piece when you get them.
Which is a pretty good price for a 11 by 17 double-sided print.
Right.
So that's a discounted price that's been negotiated.
But what 5052 would do to us as a patient community is it would decimate the amount of marijuana that we're allowed to possess from 24 dried ounces down to 3, and we're currently allowed to have 15 plants. That would be dropped down to 6 plants if you register with the state, only 4 plants if you choose not to be on the state registry. And the state registry is a big problem for a lot of patients, myself included in Washington State, because no other drug recommended or authorized or prescribed by your physician do you have to go on a registry for. In fact, the only thing that I can think of a registry for is child molesters. So it seems odd to me that for the medicine that our physician recommends that we would need to be on a state registry, especially in a legalized state. So that's definitely something that we as patients need to address going forward and try to figure this out together.
We are fighting a similar battle here in Washington, in Oregon, that you are fighting in Washington, in that our legislature is trying to curtail our medical marijuana market. And the state Senate has passed a bill just earlier this week that would curtail the access to medical marijuana. However, it looks like we might have it killed in the House, but we urge you to stay tuned and contact your legislators and urge them to protect the Medical Marijuana Act as it's currently in law. You know, a lot of businesses out there, I think there's almost 300 licensed dispensaries here in Oregon, and that's an advantage that you didn't have in Washington, unfortunately, because of former Governor Christine Gregoire's veto of the medical marijuana dispensary legislation.
Well, and other aspects too of utilizing marijuana for medicinal purposes, when you apply for work or even government housing and funding, where do you have to tell them if you're using insulin for diabetes or heart medications? So why should you have to share that not just on the level with the state, but even with your employer?
That's an excellent point.
And other aspects of your path in life?
And we really won't have a just society when it comes to cannabis until what you're saying is true, that it is considered equal to
Cannabis
insulin.
is completely non-toxic, and so this stigma against it is without rational basis. It's all about the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches that sold us marijuana prohibition so they could sell us petroleum, because hemp would have displaced petroleum. And that's why we have our hemp flame of freedom here. It's a little hemp oil that's burning a hemp wick, just showing that hemp is energy. And we will continue to have that here, and we're working to establish hemp as a new biofuel crop. There's our hemp flame of freedom, little hemp oil, hemp in here. This is next week's WIC, and just shows the whole reason that marijuana, the whole marijuana myth was created. So we've got to remove this irrational, illogical, false stigma on cannabis and allow our farmers to grow cannabis without regard to its THC content for fuel, fiber, and food. And when we do, we'll realign our whole economic system. We are taking your phone calls tonight, and if you have a question for us, you can call us at that number on your screen, 503-288-4442, and I do believe we have a caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well.
Hey, now I heard you saying that what went on here in Oregon passed through our Senate, but it's got to go through the House yet?
Yeah, and it looks like it'll get killed in the House. There's the House Ways and Means Committee is run by Ashland, Oregon Representative Peter Buckley, and he's a friend of our movement. He supported Measure 91 and Measure 80 2 years before that, and being the head of that committee gives him a great deal of power, and we're hoping we'll kill it in committee.
Well, because from what I had heard about it, I currently have a house here. We have 8 cards here. I'm a grower for 3 patients and myself, and there's 4 other growers here that share the grow site. And if we move, my understanding would be I would be knocked down to 2 cards at that point, instead of being able to keep the 8.
That's if that law that law has not passed through the legislative process, and this just gives you a good incentive to contact your state representatives in the House and urge them to kill this bill. It deserves to die a quick and painful death, I think. And it's really from law enforcement. Law enforcement is pushing this through the legislature, and people who really don't have a clue about what they're talking about. You know, they think that marijuana causes brain damage and other irrational things. And so it's our job to educate them. And so I urge you, since this will have a very negative impact on you and all you other viewers out there, that we lobby our legislators and let them know that we aren't going to allow this to happen. Now, what's going on in Washington is this Referendum 76 to stop 5052 from being implemented in the end of July. And in Oregon, in fact, I worked on a referendum. I went and lobbied in the legislature in the 95 legislative session, and then again in 97 I took a job in a state senator's office specifically to lobby against the recriminalization of marijuana. And that state senator is now our governor, Senator Kate Brown. And so I worked in her office there during that session. And they passed the legislation, and Governor Kitzhaber signed it into law. And it passed in the legislature with about 70% of the legislators voting in favor of it. Well, we got 90,000 signatures. We only needed 45,000. We turned in 92,000. And we stopped that from going into effect. And we came and voted for it in 1998. And it was ballot measure 57. Now, in 1998, we also gathered signatures for the medical marijuana bill, and we qualified that, and that was ballot measure 67. So we were in a position in the November 98 election where we said, vote no on measure 57 and vote yes on measure 67. And measure 57, to recriminalize the possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana, was defeated by 70% statewide. We won every single county in the state, and that was basically the high water mark of the prohibitionist move to recriminalize marijuana across the country. So we stopped it here in Oregon, and the tide has been receding ever since. And that's what we will do if a bad law passes and Governor Brown signs it into law. We can always get enough signatures and stop that law from going into effect. And that's what we're trying to do in Washington State with Referendum 76. And hopefully we won't have to do it this year in Oregon, but we're completely prepared to do that.
Now, I may be a cynic, but it would seem to me that the only organizations and companies that are actually opposed to ending marijuana prohibition are those companies and organizations that actually consider it to be a cash cow. You know, the prison industry, the police unions that really enjoy the forfeiture aspects of it, companies that utilize the cheap prison labor to create products to sell for exorbitant prices overseas. Now, I could be mistaken, but it seems like
I think you're spot on there, Casper.
the more I seem to delve into is like the list of people who contribute to the keep the war on drugs going are the people who embrace this as a cash cow and enjoy making money off of the backs of heartaches of the
what we
American
see are
community.
these law enforcement lobbyists, not law enforcement in general, because law enforcement officers in general are in favor of ending marijuana prohibition. I've had dozens of them tell me that we've never gone to a crime because someone was stealing for marijuana. We've never gone to a violent situation because someone was using marijuana. Your average law enforcement officer wants to see marijuana properly regulated. But there are these corrupt narcotics officers and those in the police unions that are trying to build their budgets on the backs of honest Americans like us. And we just can't allow that to continue.
You know, you identified the petrochemical industry as opposing us for reasons of their own for profit. Casper identified the corrections and the law enforcement industries as opposing us for reasons of their own when it comes to profit. And the third of that unholy triad is Big Pharma. Because they want to control marijuana. They see some money being made by mom and pop businesses in the medical marijuana business, and they don't like that when money is flowing downward. They want money to flow upward into the corporations and not to the mom and pops that currently control the medical marijuana business. That's the reason Big Pharma is going to come hard after medical marijuana. They're going to try to make it a Schedule II so that they can control the market. We can't let that happen. Cannabis is the people's medicine, and we have to keep it that way.
It's safe and effective. You know, you can take 20 aspirin and it will probably kill you. If you take more than 20, it will definitely kill you. Where you can eat pounds of marijuana and all you'll do is go to sleep. You know, and you'll wake up and you'll feel refreshed. Well, maybe it'll take a day or two for you to wake up that way, if you eat that much. But we do have more callers. Let's take another caller here. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Pretty well. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. Hey, I have a question that's a little bit off of the subject. I have multiple sensitivities resulting in allergic reaction. And I'm wondering, especially for the face, if there are any topical lotions or creams I could look for.
You know, there are a lot of topical products out there. In fact, historically, cannabis was used as a topical agent. Even Johnson & Johnson had a number of cannabis topical agents. So I'm not sure, I can't say for certain how that might affect your condition, but it's something that I would recommend you try and see.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Have a good night.
I have a collection of medical marijuana containers. You have a good night too. And many corn remedies, things where you put the cannabis extract on your corn or your bunion and then wait a day or two and scrape it and it comes right off. I have probably like 200 different ones of those and about another 25 topical products.
And you can also use can of butter on your regular corn to make it even tastier.
Yeah.
That works.
Right, which is what I thought he was doing at first. Corn's like, oh, yeah, okay, that too. So,
all right, we have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Yes.
Hey, that's you.
Yes. Hello?
Yes,
Jasper?
he's here.
This is Kim.
Hey, Jim.
It's Kim.
Jim, oh, okay, Kip. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm doing good. I waited for a long time to ask if you could tell your viewers, if you could highlight the upcoming laws, proposed laws, for the recreational, for the medicinal, how many per household, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. Well, I think it's a Senate Bill 984 that passed the Senate. Only Eugene Senator Floyd Przanski voted against that. I think it was 29-1. But like I was saying earlier, we should have that killed in committee. There's a joint committee. They like to laugh about that down in Salem. That's made of House and Senate members, and they have spent most of their time talking about how to curtail medical marijuana. They're supposed to be debating how to implement Measure 91. They haven't really been able to do that because law enforcement and the Association of Counties and Cities have been there lobbying to be able to change the law so that they can ban both medical and adult social use stores. So as we have, in fact, I think the week after next we'll have Anthony Taylor back on with Compassionate Oregonians talking about those laws. But, you know, they only have another month of mischief. They have to be out of session by the end of June. And so we'll be working to kill those bad bills. And, you know, if they don't do anything at all, that will be a good thing from my perspective, because the only thing they can do is try to curtail this law. They're not going to do anything much to help us. Don't you think, Kip?
I agree 100%. That it's only going downhill from the beginning. I don't even know what's what anymore. You know,
Yeah.
and
There's so many different bills in there, and you know, there's all these and they've just been talking about medical marijuana and not implementing Measure 91. They're trying to curtail that. Well, looks like we lost the line. Gee, the phone calls are coming in quick and furious. We'll take one more and then we'll run a video here. Okay, welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Yes. Y'all were talking about the petroleum industry and pharmaceuticals, but the major reason that it was made illegal to start with was the growing portion of it. It was to protect Dow's chemicals processed to make paper, because paper used to be made out of hemp.
It was another unholy alliance to use his firm. What it was actually made out of were hempen rags, and most rags were hemp until the invention of the cotton gin. And so the wood paper process, the craft paper process, what they call it, was invented in Germany in 1840, and it became predominant about 1850, 1855, and that replaced a lot of the rag paper that was in use before that. But the majority of rags before the invention of the cotton gin were made from hemp fiber. The vast majority of clothing was hemp fiber. And so hemp paper is also acid free, so it has a much longer shelf life. But we will be seeing the introduction of more and better hemp papers over time. But it was a lot of different companies. That's why I often use this phrase that a friend of Casper and mine came up with, this term. It's the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches that brought us marijuana prohibition. And they're going to keep kicking and screaming while we change these laws.
And I didn't realize it, but hemp paper is so much different than me because you said it's acid free.
Yeah, and most of the world's currency is made from a blend of hemp paper. The United States currency is 70% flax and 30% cotton. Most of the world's currencies 70% hemp and 30% cotton. But flax and hemp are almost indistinguishable. Just hemp's much more productive than
That's why
flax.
that paper is even kind of like considered illegal when you're trying to get it, because they know that you might be trying to make counterfeit cash with it.
Maybe so. Hey, you know what? It was just on May 2nd, back just after our last show, that a co-host on this show passed away, Dr. Philip E. Levesque, doctor of pharmacology and toxicology, a World War II veteran, a professor at numerous medical schools. He taught at medical schools across the United States and through Oxford in Africa, and he, at the age of 57, got his Doctor of Osteopathy degree and became a physician, and he started helping patients. And so we were very proud that we worked with Dr. Levesque on this show. We had him on for his 90th birthday just 2.5 years ago. And we have a memorial for Dr. Levesque that's taking place tomorrow in Salem at the Cascade Gateway Park. at the Beaver Grove Amphitheater. That'll be at 2 p.m. tomorrow, May 30th, and it's open to the public if you'd like to come to our events. Again, it's at Salem at the Cascade Gateway Park. That's at 2100 Trent Street, and it starts at 2 p.m. And we have a little video tribute to Dr. Levesque we're going to run right now. We'll be back in just a moment.
Well, I think it's very interesting that we know from historical records that cannabis has been used for literally thousands of years, and nobody has ever reported any bad effects from the use of it.
Yeah.
And when you compare that to tobacco or to alcohol, there's absolutely no comparison between tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. There's just absolutely none whatsoever. And the statement that marijuana is a gateway drug to heroin or cocaine or whatever, this was verbally thrashed by the Institute of Medicine that said there was no evidence whatsoever that this was the case. So I think the main thing that we're doing is supporting General McCafferty and a whole bunch of DEA agents who are making very high salaries and don't want to give up the game, as you might say. So the people that are making money on the marijuana issue are the DEA agents. So I guess the federal prisons, the guards in the prisons are probably also recipients of a lot of money from the marijuana business. So
Exactly.
it's really a strange, absolutely bizarre situation that this has gone on, and I can't understand why some of these politicians in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere can't see this or understand it or whatever the right word is. I don't understand it.
I was a battalion scout and point man, and any of you guys are veterans, you know what the hell a point man means. The life expectancy is about 30 minutes or so, something like that. And I was in a war history writing class with about 10 Vietnam guys, and I told them that I was a point man and scout. They says, "Oh, no, you weren't." And I says, "God damn it, yes, I was." And they said, "Nah, you weren't. If you were, you'd be dead." So here I am, mean as hell, and so forth. How many of you read the story in the Oregonian last week about the DEA trying to get hold of your patient's charts? How many of you raise your hands? You read that? Well, let me tell you, the DEA skunks and the local cops are all going crazy because you bastards have permits to use marijuana. When the board took away my license in November 3 years ago, I was really disgusted with this because they thought that they were punishing me. They were not punishing me, they were punishing my 4,000 patients. And I get the idea that they were trying to stop the medical marijuana program. Marijuana is the best drug we have found so far for the treatment of PTSD. And within the last month, I just wrote an article that marijuana prevents PTSD suicides. And I got about 1,000 comments on it from all over the country.
Well, you know, I was in the military, but I didn't see combat. But I do know, as a marijuana user, that when I smoke marijuana, I don't have dreams.
Yeah.
And when I quit using marijuana after a couple of days, I start to have some very vivid dreams.
Yeah.
So obviously, the use of marijuana will help.
That is one of the worst symptoms of PTSD, and you probably wouldn't imagine what the second most important symptom is.
What's that?
Not being able to talk about what was your worst experience. Tell me about your worst experience. Bam! Just like
so, did you feel that way after World War II? I know you went through a lot of very traumatic experiences in fighting your way into Germany and meeting up with the Russians there.
My first day, I was committed to combat.
I got in an artillery barrage that just blew the hell out of this little town where I was, and the next day they hit me with a mortar barrage. And when we crossed the Rhine River, I got strafed by German planes. I got strafed by American planes. We lost 150 men in less than an hour.
Out of how many? 150
out of our battalion.
And a battalion is what, about
1,000?
About 1,000. So 150 out of 1,000. That's pretty heavy attrition rate. 15% in an hour.
We had my battalion, my division, had the worst casualties crossing the Rhine River.
Okay, well, we certainly salute Dr. Levesque. He's helped me. He's helped thousands of other Oregonians, and we are very proud of our association with him. He's very much missed. He left our existence here back on May 2nd, but we are going to have a memorial for him tomorrow, Saturday, May 30th, in Salem at the Cascade Gateway Park in the Beaver Grove Amphitheater. And so that's open to the public at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Do we have another phone call? Okay, we'll go ahead and take another phone call. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, yeah, I was just wondering, ballot measure 91 that passed overwhelmingly, it said right in there, the medical marijuana program will be left alone intact. How can they change anything?
Well, it should be that way, but you know, the media, our esteemed Oregonian newspaper, or Oregon Live website, whatever you want to call it, they have backed certain legislators who say, oh, they didn't really say those things. This is just a template.
I've got a copy of it right in my hand.
Yeah, no, the legislators are lying, and our job is to go down there and hold their feet to the fire and tell them, no, we voted for what we meant to vote on. And if by some quirk of evil out there, they're able to change this, we can take pens, gather signatures, and through the referendum process, stop it from going into effect.
In order, if that happens, I'm telling you, I've got the place that I grow at. I have two partners. We each grow for ourselves and 3 patients. Mm-hmm. Our patients depend on us totally for their medication.
Certainly.
And then in 9 years of doing this, I was like one of the first 2,000 to get my card. In 9 years of doing this, I've lost 3 patients, and I've got letters from all their families saying that their quality of life was so much better at the end than being all spaced out on pharmaceutical drugs. This is ridiculous, and I'm serious. The state of Oregon, the people need to stand up and do a class action lawsuit against the state. This is ridiculous.
Well, you know, a class action lawsuit isn't the way to go. I mean, it sounds good, but the real thing to do is to go down and talk to our legislators one-on-one. Contact the ones that you vote on in your House district, in your Senate district, and explain what you just told our viewing audience about. And if they do pass a bad bill, we have the option of stopping it in the referendum process. And we did that here in Oregon in 1997. We stopped them from recriminalizing the possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. And so we have to take this process. The class action route is not the way to address this. The way to address it is to lobby our legislators in Salem right now before they can pass anything else bad, and spend time on that. And then if that doesn't work, if something bad passes and it goes to the governor and Governor Brown signs it, then we have the referendum process. We can gather signatures and stop it from going into effect and put it up for another vote of the people. We did that in '98. And we're doing it right now in Washington State with a bad law the legislature's passed there. That's Referendum 76. And we'll do it here in Oregon if we need to as well.
I know you guys worked your butts off doing this, but what you guys are doing are not working. We need to put our foot down on this time. It's ridiculous. And they're trying to, OLCC has nothing to do with the DHS as part of the OMMP. How can they initiate rules that have to do to the medical side of it? How?
The legislature can change these rules. Unless we put it in that they can't change it, then they can change it. And it's our job to get down there and overcome these police lobbyists, the associated cities and counties, and make certain that we stop it. And that's the only way to do it, I'm telling you.
You need to understand, too, like the lottery system. The lottery makes $100 million profit a month. The head guy gets $450,000 a month. Why isn't some of that money, more of that $1 billion a year, going to schools and roads? Oregon's legislatures, I'm sorry, sir, but they're not normal people.
I'm not a legislator. Never been a legislator.
Yeah, but the legislators that we have in office right now, they don't think like the normal man does.
There are a few good ones. I've got to say there are a few good ones, and they're standing up for us. You know, Senator Floyd Przansky stood up 29-1 and voted against that bill that passed. And
that's
Senator Buck. Well,
that's not really good odds of lobbying those guys.
You know, I've seen some incredible things if you get out there and try. You've got to go and talk to them and let them know where you're coming from. And
you know, all the state of Oregon.
That's the process. It's a lot easier than filing a lawsuit. Let me tell you that too.
Dispensaries, but I just think that. Oh, I'm off the air.
I understand. No, you're not off the air. But I want to thank you for your comments. We're almost off the air. We've only got less than 4 minutes left. But I appreciate your call, and I definitely agree with your passion on this.
Hey, call back next week.
Yeah, and
I will
be
for
sure to contact the legislators. That's really the bottom line. You know, you can call us and talk to us, and that's great, and you've explained your position, but let this be practice to contact your state legislators, and if you don't like it, go down in Salem and talk to them face to face. You know, and that's very effective. I have seen it work myself. You know, just stand up, and they'll start erasing things out of the law you don't like, and so please do that.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
You're welcome. And again, if we don't like what they pass, we can launch another referendum here in Oregon and stop it from going into effect. Like I said, recriminalization of marijuana passed by 70% of the legislators in 1997. We got 92,000 signatures, stopped it from going into effect, and then we beat it with 70% of the whole state voting against it. So we can do the same thing. Hopefully we'll do it in Washington.
Yes.
And I've been by the halls of Congress, and it smells like the most what they pass is gas. So I wouldn't really. They're so full of it. So.
Well, Steve, it's good to have you back on the show. You want to tell our audience a little bit more about hemp news and your website? And
sure.
Give them
they should check us out every day at hemp.org/news. We update that every day. And if you want to check out my personal site, that's tokesignals.com. I have a book out about the history of cannabis, and it's called The Little Black Book of Marijuana, and it's worth your while if you want to get a little bit into the history of the plant and its relationship with the human species.
And Casper, you want to tell them about your radio?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are the only all cannabis all the time broadcasting network through iHeartRadio. Find us with a Google search. You got a Google app in the Google store you can download for free into your Androids to enjoy us on the run. Same with SoundCloud, Tumblr, and all the other social outlets. So like a good joint, time for hemp is best when you share it with your friends.
And you can share this show. We'll be back here live next week. And if you have need for a physician, can help you with medical marijuana, we have physicians all over the country. You can call us toll free anywhere in the United States at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you're here in Portland, you can call us at 503-281-5100. Thanks for coming on, gentlemen. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll be back next week, and we're going to go out with another great song of Mr. Justin James Bridges, accompanied on the drums by Jimmy Harden. Have a good night and help us restore hemp.
First take my knowledge of cannabis, then add a touch of lyrical gold. Soon be joined with magical beat. And this how my day stories are told. So sip, I relax and pull at the bone. Take a big dab, but I hold it too long. Exo slowly so you'll find you're in the right spot to get free your mind. And there's a smoke clears, my place so in the got no fear. So when you feel me, do you know what this is going? Everybody dab it up and let's keep talking. And there's a smoke clears, my place so in the got no fear. So when you feel me, do you know what this is going? Everybody dab it up and let's keep talking. Everybody was dabbing. Nails red like the sun.